The thunder of hooves competed with gunfire as Gabriella Matthews pressed herself against the stagecoach floor, her heart hammering in her chest. The year was 1876, and what should have been a routine journey to Denver had erupted into chaos on the dusty plains of Colorado Territory. A bullet splintered the wooden panel inches from her face, sending splinters flying across her cheek. Outside, the driver's scream was cut short, and she felt the wagon lurch as his body fell from the seat. "Everyone down!" shouted the banker sitting opposite her, but it was unnecessary advice. Gabriella was already flattened against the floor, her traveling dress gathering dust as the stagecoach careened wildly without guidance. Through the small window, she caught a glimpse of riders dressed in dark clothing, bandanas covering their faces. Not Indians, but outlaws. Their guns flashed in the afternoon sun as they fired again and again. The banker clutched his chest suddenly, a dark stain spreading across his waistcoat as he slumped forward. Gabriella bit back a scream. 22 years of life hadn't prepared her for this moment. The widow seated beside her wasn't as restrained, her wails piercing through the gunfire. The stagecoach wheels hit something, a rock, perhaps, and the entire vehicle tilted precariously. For a horrible moment, Gabriella was certain they would overturn. Then she heard it different hoofbeats, a faster rhythm approaching from the east. Through the dust-streaked window, she saw a rider on a powerful chestnut stallion charging toward the stagecoach. Unlike the outlaws, this man wore no mask, just a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his features. He rode fearlessly alongside the runaway coach, his horse matching the frantic pace of the team. "Take my hand," he shouted, reaching toward the door as he brought his horse dangerously close. Gabriella hesitated, looking at the gap between the racing stagecoach and the man's horse. It was madness to attempt such a leap. "The horses are heading for the ravine," the stranger shouted. "You've got to jump now." With no driver to guide them, the panicked stagecoach horses were indeed veering toward the edge of the trail where it dropped off steeply. Death awaited either way, by bullet, by fall, or by taking this stranger's hand. Gabriella made her choice. She flung open the door, the wind immediately tearing at her clothes and hair. The widow behind her screamed warnings, but there was no time to explain. Balancing precariously in the doorway, Gabriella reached out toward the cowboy. Their fingers touched, missed, touched again. The stagecoach hit another bump, nearly throwing her out completely. The cowboy maneuvered his horse even closer, so close that the animal's shoulder brushed against the careening vehicle. "Jump," he commanded, his eyes locked on hers. Gabriella gathered her courage and leaped into space. For one horrifying moment, there was nothing beneath her but the rushing ground. Then, strong arms caught her, pulling her across the saddle. She clung desperately to the stranger as he reined his horse away from the stagecoach, which continued its deadly path toward the ravine. "Hold tight," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. She wrapped her arms around his waist as he spurred the horse forward, away from the gunfire. Behind them, the stagecoach disappeared over the edge of the ravine. The screams of the remaining passengers cut horribly short by the sound of splintering wood and the final terrified cries of the horses. Gabriella buried her face against the back of the stranger who had saved her life, unable to watch. His body was solid, warm, and alive, a stark contrast to the death that had nearly claimed her. "I've got you," he said, guiding his horse into a stand of trees where they'd be hidden from the outlaws. "You're safe now." Only when they'd stopped did Gabriella realize she was trembling violently. The cowboy dismounted in one fluid motion, then reached up to help her down. Her legs buckled beneath her, and he caught her before she could fall. "Easy there," he said, his voice gentler now. In the dappled light of the trees, she could finally see his face, tanned by sun and wind, with a strong jawline softened by kind eyes the color of a summer sky. He wasn't much older than she was, perhaps 26 or 27. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely audible. "The others," he shook his head grimly. "I'm sorry. I couldn't get to them in time." Gabriella closed her eyes, tears spilling down her dust-streaked face. People she'd shared conversation with just an hour ago were now gone. "I'm Beau Foster," the cowboy said, offering her his canteen. "Drink this, then we need to move. Those men might come looking." She took a small sip of water, trying to gather herself. "Gabriella Matthews. I was on my way to Denver to take a teaching position." Beau nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Well, Miss Matthews, Denver's still a good 2 days' ride from here. But first we need to get you somewhere safe. My ranch isn't far. We can rest there before deciding what to do next." "Your ranch?" "Pine Creek. Nothing fancy, but it's good land." He paused, listening intently. "We should go. Can you ride?" Gabriella nodded, though she'd only ridden placid horses in her father's pasture back in St. Louis, never a powerful stallion like Beau's. He seemed to read her apprehension. "Dash is steady. He won't give you any trouble." He helped her into the saddle, then swung up behind her, his chest pressed against her back as he reached around to take the reins. "I'll ride us out of here. Then when we're clear of danger, I'll let you try handling him yourself." They set off through the trees, keeping to the shadows. Gabriella was acutely aware of Beau's presence, his arms on either side of her, his breath occasionally stirring her hair. She'd never been this close to a man who wasn't family, and despite the circumstances, she found herself noticing the clean scent of him, like open air and leather. "Who were they?" she asked after they'd ridden in silence for some time. "Likely the Clayton gang," Beau replied. "They've been terrorizing this territory for months. Stagecoach robberies are their specialty. But they didn't even try to rob us. They just shot everyone." Beau was quiet for a moment. "Something's changed. They've never been this violent before. Makes me wonder what or who was on that coach that they wanted so badly." Gabriella thought of the passengers, the banker, the widow, a salesman, and a young man who'd kept to himself. "There's nothing special about any of us. I'm just a schoolteacher." "A pretty schoolteacher traveling alone might be reason enough for some men," Beau said grimly. His words sent a chill through her. The reality of her situation began to sink in. She was alone in the wilderness with a man she'd just met, miles from civilization. As if sensing her thoughts, Beau added, "You've nothing to fear from me, Miss Matthews. My mother raised me better than that. I'll get you safely to wherever you want to go." Something in his voice made her believe him. Perhaps it was the straightforward way he spoke, or maybe it was simply that he'd risked his life to save hers when he could have ridden past. They emerged from the trees onto a rolling plain. In the distance, Gabriella could see mountains rising against the sky, their peaks still snow-capped despite the June heat. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Beau said, following her gaze. "That's why I stayed, even after my pa died. Couldn't imagine living anywhere else." "It is beautiful," she agreed. "Different from Missouri. Bigger somehow." "That it is." He loosened his grip on the reins. "Want to try riding now? It'll take your mind off things." Gabriella hesitantly took the reins. The horse responded to her touch more sensitively than she expected, and she had to adjust her handling. "That's it," Beau encouraged. "Dash likes a gentle hand." For the next hour they rode across the open country, Beau occasionally pointing out landmarks or giving her riding tips. His ranch appeared on the horizon as the sun began its descent, a modest homestead with a small main house, a barn, and several corrals. A creek lined with pine trees ran alongside the property, explaining its name. As they approached, a dog came bounding out to meet them, barking excitedly. Behind it, an older man emerged from the barn. "Garrett," Beau called, "we've got company." The older man shaded his eyes against the setting sun. "So I see. Wasn't expecting you back till tomorrow." They rode into the yard, and Beau dismounted before helping Gabriella down. Her legs were stiff from the long ride, and she wobbled slightly. "This is Miss Gabriella Matthews," Beau explained to Garrett. "There was trouble with the Denver Stagecoach. Clayton gang hit it hard." Garrett's weathered face darkened. "Anyone else make it out?" Beau shook his head. "Lord have mercy," the older man said. He tipped his hat to Gabriella. "Garrett Wilson, miss. I'm the foreman here. Been with the Foster family since this one was in short pants." "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Wilson," Gabriella replied automatically, though "pleased" seemed an inappropriate word given the circumstances. "Miss Matthews needs a place to stay tonight," Beau said, "and probably some food. I don't imagine the Stagecoach served much of a lunch." "I'll see what I can rustle up," Garrett replied. "Miss, you're welcome to wash up inside. There's plenty of hot water on the stove." Beau led her to the house, a simple structure of solid logs with a wide porch across the front. Inside, it was surprisingly neat for a bachelor's home, with sturdy furniture and colorful woven rugs on the plank floors. "My mother's touch," Beau explained, noticing her appraisal. "She's been gone 5 years now, but I've tried to keep things the way she liked them." "It's lovely," Gabriella said sincerely. "The washroom's through there," he said, pointing to a door. "I'll find you something clean to wear. Might be a bit large, but better than—" He gestured at her dust-covered, torn dress. Left alone, Gabriella caught sight of herself in a small mirror and barely recognized the wild-eyed woman who stared back. Her carefully pinned chestnut hair had come loose during the escape, tumbling around her shoulders. Dirt and tears had streaked her face, and there was a small cut on her cheek from the flying splinters. She washed as best she could with the basin and cloth provided, grateful for the warm water that helped soothe her aching muscles. When she'd finished, she found that Beau had left a man's shirt and trousers outside the door, along with a leather belt. The clothing swam on her slender frame, but once she'd rolled up the sleeves and pant legs and cinched the belt tight, she felt presentably covered. Her own clothing was beyond immediate repair, so she folded it neatly and carried it with her as she made her way back to the main room. Beau had also cleaned up, changing into a fresh shirt that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered in his eyes that made her suddenly self-conscious about wearing his clothing. "Feel better?" he asked. "Much, thank you." She set her folded dress on a chair. "Is there somewhere I could wash this tomorrow?" "Of course, though you might want something more suitable for the journey to Denver. There's a trading post about an hour's ride from here. We can stop there tomorrow and get you properly outfitted." Garrett appeared in the doorway. "Supper's ready. Nothing fancy, just beans, cornbread, and some leftover venison stew." They ate at the kitchen table, Gabriella surprised by how hungry she was despite the day's trauma. The men kept the conversation light, telling stories about the ranch and the local area. It was clear they were trying to give her space to recover from the shock, and she appreciated their thoughtfulness. As they finished the meal, Beau broached the subject that had been weighing on her mind. The marshal in Rivers Bend should be told about the attack. I'll ride in tomorrow and report it. What about the bodies? Gabriella asked softly. The men exchanged a glance. I'll round up some of the hands, Garrett offered. We can see to that while you take Miss Matthews to the trading post. Beau nodded. We'll need to decide what comes next. I'm happy to escort you to Denver when you're ready, Miss Matthews, but there's no rush if you need time. The kindness in his offer brought tears to her eyes that she quickly blinked away. You've already done so much, Mr. Foster. I couldn't ask you to travel all that way. It's not asking if I'm offering, he replied simply. And please call me Beau. Then I'm Gabriella, she managed a small smile. And thank you. I would appreciate an escort to Denver, but I don't want to be a burden any longer than necessary. After dinner, Garrett excused himself to check on the horses, leaving Beau and Gabriella alone by the fire he'd built in the stone hearth. The flames cast a warm glow over the room, making it feel more homey than Gabriella had initially realized. You have a lovely home, she said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. It's not much compared to city living, I imagine. I grew up on a small farm outside St. Louis, she replied. This feels more like home than the city ever did. Beau looked at her with new interest. A farm girl? Wouldn't have guessed. You have the manners of a city lady. My father believed in education. He sent me to a ladies' seminary in the city. Her voice softened with memory. He said just because we worked the land didn't mean we had to be ignorant of the finer things. A wise man. He was. He passed last winter. That's why I took the teaching position in Denver. There is nothing keeping me in Missouri anymore. Beau nodded, understanding in his eyes. My father died when I was 19, left me the ranch and a mountain of debt. Took years to get it running properly again. You've done well for yourself, Gabriella observed. We get by. He poked at the fire, sending sparks up the chimney. Pine Creek isn't the biggest spread, but it's enough. 50 head of cattle, some good horses we breed and train. Garrett's been like a second father to me, showing me the ropes. They talked late into the night, the conversation flowing easily between them. Gabriella learned that Beau had been born on the ranch, that his mother had been a schoolteacher like herself before marrying his father, and that he had taught himself to read from her books. In return, she told him about her childhood in Missouri, her love of literature, and her dreams of one day opening her own school. It wasn't until Gabriella stifled a yawn that Beau realized how late it had grown. I've kept you up too long after such an ordeal, he said apologetically. You must be exhausted. I'm tired, she admitted, but talking helped more than I expected. It's kept my mind from dwelling on what happened. Beau showed her to a small bedroom that had once been his mother's sewing room. It's not much, but the bed's comfortable, he said. Sleep as long as you need. We won't leave for town until you're ready. Alone in the little room, Gabriella sat on the edge of the narrow bed, the events of the day finally catching up with her. She was alive because of Beau Foster, a man who had risked his life for a stranger. As she lay down, her last conscious thought was of his blue eyes and the way they crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Morning brought sunlight streaming through the small window and the smell of coffee and bacon. Gabriella dressed in Beau's borrowed clothes again and made her way to the kitchen, where she found him cooking breakfast. Hope you're hungry, he said by way of greeting. Garrett already ate and headed out with some of the hands. They'll He hesitated. "See to the stagecoach," she finished for him. "I understand, and yes, I am hungry." They ate breakfast, discussing the day's plans. Beau would take her to the trading post first, then to River's Bend to speak with the marshal. After that, they would decide on the timing for the journey to Denver. "Do you have any money?" Beau asked suddenly. Gabriella's hand went to the small hidden pocket in her ruined dress. "My reticule was lost in the stagecoach, but I kept my savings sewn into my hem. It's not much, $20, but enough for some supplies." Beau looked relieved. "Good thinking. The bank in River's Bend might be able to arrange for you to access any funds you have in St. Louis if needed." After breakfast, they saddled up Gabriella on a gentle mare named Willow, instead of sharing Dash, and headed for the trading post. The day was clear and warm. The landscape spread before them like a painting. Despite the circumstances that had brought her here, Gabriella couldn't help but admire the beauty of the territory. The trading post was a ramshackle building that served as general store, post office, and gathering place for the scattered ranches in the area. Mrs. Polson, the proprietor's wife, clucked sympathetically when Beau explained Gabriella's situation. "You poor dear. What a terrible thing to experience. Come, let's find you something suitable to wear." The store's selection of women's clothing was limited, but Gabriella managed to find a serviceable riding skirt, 2 shirtwaists, and undergarments that would do until she reached Denver. Mrs. Polson also provided a straw hat to shield her from the sun and a small carpet bag for her belongings. "My Frank rides the mail coach to Denver next week," Mrs. Polson said as she wrapped Gabriella's purchases. "If you haven't left by then, he could take you." "That's kind of you," Gabriella replied, "but Mr. Foster has offered to escort me." Mrs. Polson's eyebrows rose slightly as she glanced between them. "Has he now? Well, you couldn't ask for a better guide. Beau Foster knows this territory better than most." Outside, as Gabriella changed into her new clothes in the privacy of a storage room, she overheard Mrs. Polson speaking to Beau. "That Clayton gang is getting bolder by the day. The marshal's been trying to organize a posse, but most folks are too scared to join." "Any idea what they're after?" Beau asked. "Word is they're looking for something specific, or someone. Frank heard rumors in Denver about a witness to their last big job, a bank robbery in Pueblo that left 3 dead. Supposedly someone who could identify the gang leader got away." Gabriella froze in the act of buttoning her shirtwaist. The young man on the stagecoach who had kept to himself. Could he have been the witness? Is that why the gang had attacked with such violence, not even attempting to rob the coach first? She finished dressing quickly and rejoined Beau, her mind racing with this new information. As they mounted their horses to leave, Gabriella noticed a group of riders approaching the trading post from the north. Something about their formation made her uneasy. Beau noticed them too. "Let's go," he said quietly. "Take the south trail." They rode away at a casual pace, not wanting to draw attention, but Gabriella could feel Beau's tension. Once they were out of sight of the trading post, he urged their horses to a faster gait. "Was it them?" she asked, knowing he would understand her meaning. "Can't be sure, but I don't like coincidences," he replied. "The Clayton gang isn't known to frequent this area normally. If it is them, they might be looking for survivors." The implication was clear: they might be looking for her. River's Bend was a small but growing town, nestled where the Snake River made a wide curve around a granite bluff. Unlike many frontier towns Gabriella had heard about, it had a permanent feel, with several buildings of brick rather than just wood. The marshal's office was one of these, situated on the main street next to the bank. Marshal Dawson was a gray-haired man with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He listened intently as they described the Stagecoach attack, taking notes in a neat hand. "Did you recognize any of the attackers, Miss Matthews?" he asked. "No, they all wore bandanas over their faces." "How many were there?" "5, I think," she replied, trying to recall the chaotic scene. "Maybe 6. The marshal looked at Beau. "And you're certain it was the Clayton gang?" "Their method matches previous attacks, except for the increased violence," Beau said, "and Mrs. Polson mentioned rumors about a witness they're hunting." Marshal Dawson's expression turned grim. "I heard those rumors too. There is a bank clerk from the Pueblo robbery who escaped during the chaos. He was supposed to testify against the gang leader, a man named Thomas Clayton. The clerk disappeared from protective custody 2 weeks ago. Word is he was heading to Denver." "He could have been on that stagecoach," Gabriella said. "There was a young man who kept to himself. He seemed nervous." The marshal nodded slowly. "That fits the description. If Clayton's men thought he was on that coach, they would have shot first and asked questions never." He looked directly at Gabriella. "Which means you might still be in danger, Miss Matthews. If they realized there was a survivor who might have seen their faces." "But I didn't see them clearly," she protested. "They don't know that," Beau pointed out, "and men like the Claytons don't take chances." Marshal Dawson leaned back in his chair. "I'd advise against traveling to Denver for the time being, at least until we can round up this gang. They're likely to be watching the roads." "But my teaching position—" "We'll have to wait," the marshal said firmly. "Your life is worth more than a job, miss." Beau cleared his throat. "She's welcome to stay at Pine Creek until it's safe. We're out of the way, and I have men who can keep watch." The marshal nodded approvingly. "That's probably the safest option for now. I'll send word when it's clear to travel." He stood up. "In the meantime, I'll telegraph Denver to let them know what happened and that you're delayed but safe." As they left the marshal's office, Gabriella felt a mixture of relief and frustration. Relief that she wouldn't have to face the dangerous journey to Denver immediately, but frustration at having her plans derailed. "I'm sorry about your teaching position," Beau said as they walked to their horses, "but the marshal's right. Better safe than sorry." "I know," she sighed. "It's just, I had everything planned out so carefully." Beau smiled sympathetically. "Life rarely follows our plans out here in the West. You learn to adapt." They stopped at the general store to purchase additional supplies for Gabriella's extended stay, then visited the bank where she was able to arrange for a small draft from her St. Louis account. The banker was apologetic about the loss of his colleague on the Stagecoach and insisted on expediting the transaction. By mid-afternoon, they were heading back to Pine Creek. Gabriella found herself studying Beau as they rode, noting the easy way he sat his horse and the alert manner in which he scanned their surroundings. There was a quiet competence about him that she found reassuring. "What will I do at your ranch?" she asked suddenly. "I can't just sit idle while you and your men work." Beau glanced over at her. "Can you cook?" "Reasonably well." "Then you've already found employment," he said with a smile. "Garrett's many things, but a chef isn't one of them. The men would probably build you a statue if you improved their meals." Gabriella laughed, surprising herself. It seemed wrong to feel any lightness after yesterday's tragedy, but there was something about Beau that made her comfortable. "I could also help with accounts or correspondence," she offered. "I have good penmanship and a head for figures." Now that's a blessing, Beau said with feeling. I've been putting off my ledger work for weeks. Pa always said I had the handwriting of a drunken chicken. They continued their journey, the conversation flowing easily between them. By the time they reached Pine Creek, Gabriella had almost forgotten the danger that had forced her to take refuge there. Almost. Garrett met them in the yard, his expression grave. "Found the stagecoach," he reported. "It's bad. 4 passengers and the driver all dead. We buried them proper with markers, said some words over them." "Thank you," Beau said quietly. "There's more," Garrett continued. "While we were there, we spotted riders watching from the ridge. When they saw us, they took off north." Beau's jaw tightened. "Clayton's men." "That's my guess. They seemed mighty interested in what we were doing." "They're looking for something. Or someone." Beau glanced at Gabriella. "Or making sure everyone's dead," Garrett added grimly. That night, Beau called his men together and explained the situation. There were 5 ranch hands in total, not counting Garrett. They were a rough-looking lot, but Gabriella could tell they respected Beau by the way they listened attentively. "Miss Matthews will be staying with us for a while," Beau concluded. "The Clayton gang might come looking for her. I want someone keeping watch at all times. And no one rides alone until this is settled." The men nodded their understanding, a couple of them tipping their hats to Gabriella in a gesture of solidarity. It was clear they took the threat seriously. After the meeting, Beau showed Gabriella to the kitchen. "It's all yours," he said. "We eat simple, but any change would be welcome." "I'll do my best," she promised, surveying the reasonably well-stocked pantry. "Though I might need some fresh vegetables if you have a garden." "Behind the house. Help yourself to whatever's growing." The next morning, Gabriella rose early and made breakfast for the ranch hands, biscuits, bacon, and eggs with coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, as her father used to say. The men's appreciation was evident in their clean plates and murmured thanks. After breakfast, while the men went about their daily work, Gabriella began organizing the kitchen to her liking. Beau had offered her his mother's old aprons, which she gratefully accepted. By midday, she had bread rising on the sideboard and a pot of beans simmering for dinner. Beau found her in the garden that afternoon, gathering vegetables for a stew. He leaned against the fence, watching her work. "The men are talking about petitioning for you to stay permanently," he said, amusement in his voice. "Hank says it's the first real breakfast he's had in 3 years." Gabriella smiled, brushing soil from her hands. "I'm glad they approve. It feels good to be useful." "I was hoping you might look at those ledgers today if you're not too busy." "I'd be happy to." Beau led her to a small study off the main room, where a desk was piled with papers in various states of organization. "It's a mess," he admitted. "I keep meaning to sort it out, but there's always something more pressing to do." "I'll see what I can do," Gabriella said, already assessing the task. She spent the afternoon bringing order to Beau's financial records, impressed by what she found beneath the disarray. For all his self-deprecating comments about his bookkeeping, Beau was running a profitable operation. Pine Creek was debt-free, with steady income from cattle sales and horse breeding. When she finally emerged from the study, the sun was setting. She found Beau on the front porch, whittling a piece of wood into what looked like a small horse. "You're good at that," she observed, sitting beside him on the porch swing. He shrugged modestly. "Just a way to keep my hands busy. How are the books?" "In better shape than you suggested. You're a good businessman, Beau." "Don't sound so surprised," he teased. "I'm not. I just think you sell yourself short sometimes." He was quiet for a moment, his hands still on the carving. "Maybe I do. Growing up, my pa was always the one with big ideas and grand plans. I was more practical. He used to say I lacked vision." "There's nothing wrong with being practical," Gabriella said. "Your practicality has made this ranch successful." Beau smiled at her, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you for that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sky turned from gold to deep purple. Stars began to appear, more numerous than Gabriella had ever seen in Missouri. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "It grows on you," Beau agreed. "When I was younger, I thought about leaving, seeing more of the world. But now, I can't imagine being anywhere else." "I can understand that." Gabriella pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders as the evening cooled. "Though I always dreamed of going west. That's why I took the Denver position." "What drew you to teaching?" Beau asked. "I love seeing the moment when a child understands something for the first time. That spark of knowledge. It's like watching a candle being lit." She smiled at the memory of her brief teaching experience back in Missouri. "And books opened up the world to me when I couldn't travel. I wanted to give that gift to others. My mother felt the same way. She taught me to read before I was 5. Beau pointed to a bookshelf visible through the window. Those were hers. "You're welcome to borrow any that interest you." Their conversation continued as the stars fully emerged, neither seeming eager to end the evening. It wasn't until Garrett called from inside that dinner was ready that they finally rose from the porch swing. The days fell into a pattern after that. Gabriella cooked, kept the house, and worked on organizing Beau's accounts. In the evenings, they would often sit on the porch talking or read together by the fire. Occasionally, Beau would teach her to play chess on an old set that had belonged to his father. A week passed, then 2. No word came from Marshall Dawson about the Clayton gang, but there had been no sign of them near Pine Creek either. Gabriella found herself settling into ranch life with surprising ease. She enjoyed the simple rhythm of the days and the sense of community among Beau and his men. She also found herself increasingly drawn to Beau. His quiet strength and kindness were unlike anything she'd encountered before. He treated her with respect but not distance, challenging her thoughts during their evening discussions, but always listening to her views. One morning, as Gabriella was hanging laundry on the line behind the house, she noticed Beau in the corral working with a young horse. She paused to watch as he moved with the animal, his gestures calm and patient. The colt, initially skittish, gradually relaxed under Beau's gentle handling. "He has a way with them," Garrett said, appearing beside her with an armful of shirts to hang. "Always has, even as a boy." "He's very patient," Gabriella observed. "That he is. With horses, with his men, with business." Garrett gave her a sidelong glance. "With pretty schoolteachers, too." Gabriella felt her cheeks warm. "He'd been very kind to offer me shelter." "Kind, yes. But there's more to it than that." The older man hung a shirt on the line. "I've known that boy his whole life. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Before Gabriella could respond, a rider appeared on the ridge overlooking the ranch. Garrett immediately tensed, his hand moving to the pistol at his hip. "Get inside," he ordered quietly. "Tell Beau we've got company." Gabriella hurried to the corral, trying to appear casual in case the rider was watching. Beau saw her coming and must have read something in her expression, because he immediately secured the colt and met her at the gate. Rider on the ridge, she said softly. Garrett said to tell you. Beau's eyes flicked to the figure on horseback, then back to Gabriella. Inside. Stay away from the windows. She nodded and walked calmly to the house, though her heart was pounding. Through the kitchen window, she saw Beau signal to his men, who casually but purposefully moved to strategic positions around the property. The rider approached slowly, a single man on a dun-colored horse. As he got closer, Gabriella could see he was older, wearing a dusty black coat and a badge that caught the sunlight. Relief washed over her. It was Marshal Dawson. Beau met him in the yard, the tension in his posture easing as he recognized the visitor. They spoke for several minutes before Beau nodded toward the house. Gabriella moved away from the window as they approached. "Miss Matthews," the marshal greeted her as they entered. "Good to see you well." "Marshal Dawson, what brings you to Pine Creek?" "News," he said simply, removing his hat. "Some good, some concerning." Beau gestured for them to sit at the kitchen table. "What's the good news?" "We caught 2 of Clayton's men in a saloon in Silverton, drunk and bragging about their exploits. They're locked up now and singing like canaries to avoid the noose." "And what are they saying?" Gabriella asked. "That the Stagecoach attack was indeed about the witness, a bank clerk named Edward Simmons. They confirmed he was on board." The marshal looked directly at Gabriella. "They also mentioned seeing Beau ride off with someone from the coach. They weren't sure who it was, but Clayton's mighty interested in finding out." Beau's expression hardened. "So they are looking for Gabriella." "Possibly, though they don't seem to know her name or who she is, just that there was a survivor who might have seen something." Marshal Dawson sighed. "Clayton himself is still at large with at least 3 of his men. Word is they've been asking questions in River's Bend about the hero rancher who saved someone from the coach." "What about Denver?" Gabriella asked. "My teaching position." "I sent word as you asked," the marshal assured her. "The school board understands the situation and has hired a temporary teacher. Your position will be held for you until it's safe to travel." It was a relief to know her job was secure, but frustrating to remain in limbo. "How long do you think that will be?" "Hard to say. Clayton's gang has gone to ground. Could be weeks. Could be longer." The marshal looked between them. "In the meantime, I'd advise continued caution. Vary your routines. Keep armed men on watch." After the marshal left, Beau and Gabriella sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing the implications of his news. "I'm putting you and your men in danger by staying here," Gabriella finally said. "We can handle ourselves," Beau replied firmly, "and you're safer here than anywhere else right now." "But for how long? I can't impose on your hospitality indefinitely." Beau reached across the table and took her hand, surprising her. "You're not imposing, Gabriella. Having you here has been—" He seemed to search for the right word. "A blessing." The warmth in his blue eyes made her heart flutter in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "Thank you," she said softly. "I've felt the same." His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. "Then stay. Not just until it's safe, but longer, if you wanted to." The implication of his words hung between them. Before she could respond, Garrett appeared at the door. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, looking genuinely apologetic as they quickly separated their hands. "Beau, the men need you at the north pasture. Something spooked the cattle." Beau stood reluctantly. "We'll continue this conversation later," he promised Gabriella before following Garrett out. Left alone, Gabriella tried to make sense of what had just happened. Was Beau suggesting what she thought he was? The possibility both thrilled and terrified her. In just a few weeks he had become important to her in ways she hadn't expected. But her plans had always centered around teaching, building a life in Denver. Could she really consider changing everything? The cattle incident turned out to be serious. A mountain lion had killed a calf and scattered the herd across difficult terrain. It took Beau and his men until well after dark to round up the frightened animals and secure them in a safer pasture. By the time Beau returned to the house, Gabriella had gone to bed, leaving him a covered plate of food in the kitchen. Their interrupted conversation would have to wait for another day. The next morning brought new complications. One of the hands rode in from River's Bend with supplies, and gossip strangers had been asking about Pine Creek Ranch and the schoolteacher staying there. "They're getting closer," Beau said grimly after hearing the news. "We need to be ready." He increased the watch around the ranch and made sure everyone was armed, including Gabriella. He gave her a small revolver, showing her how to load and fire it despite her initial reluctance. "I've never shot at anyone," she protested. "I hope you never have to," Beau replied, "but I'd rather you have the option than not." That night, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, the tension of the day finally began to ease. Beau had been quiet and preoccupied, but now he seemed to relax beside her. "I'm sorry about yesterday," he said suddenly. "What I was trying to say before Garrett interrupted—" "I know what you were saying," Gabriella said softly. "Or at least, I think I do." Beau turned to face her, his expression earnest in the fading light. "I know we haven't known each other long. And I know you had plans that didn't include getting stranded on a cattle ranch with a man you barely know. But these past weeks have been unexpected," she finished for him, "in the best possible way." Hope flickered in his eyes. "So you've felt it too? This connection between us?" "I have." Gabriella's heart was racing now. "But I don't know what it means for my future. For our futures." Beau took her hands in his touch gentle but sure. "I'm not asking for promises, Gabriella. Just possibility. A chance to see where this might lead without the shadow of Clayton's gang hanging over us." She found herself nodding. "I'd like that too." The moment hung between them, charged with unspoken feelings. Beau leaned forward slightly, his intentions clear. Gabriella closed her eyes as his lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it was almost reverent. When they parted, she kept her eyes closed for a moment longer, savoring the feeling. When she opened them, Beau was watching her with a mixture of wonder and tenderness that made her breath catch. "I've wanted to do that since the day you reorganized my ledgers," he admitted with a small smile. Gabriella laughed softly. "That's a strange catalyst for romance." "It was the look of concentration on your face, the way you bit your lip when you found a discrepancy." His smile widened. "I think that's when I knew I was in trouble." Their second kiss was less hesitant, a more certain exploration of their growing feelings. Gabriella found herself melting against him, one hand coming up to rest on his shoulder as his arm encircled her waist. A discreet cough from the doorway broke them apart. Garrett stood there, his expression a mixture of amusement and apology. "Sorry to interrupt again," he said, "but there's something you both should see." They followed him to the back of the house where one of the hands, a young man named Riley, was waiting with a folded piece of paper. "Found this nailed to a tree at the edge of our property," Riley explained, handing the paper to Beau. "Wasn't there this morning during my patrol." Beau unfolded the note and read it silently, his expression darkening. Without a word, he handed it to Gabriella. "To the rancher harboring the witness," she read aloud. "Give her up by noon tomorrow or face the consequences. This is not a negotiation. T.C. Thomas Clayton." The gang leader himself had left the message. "How did they find us?" Gabriella whispered. "Doesn't matter now," Beau said, his voice hard with determination. "What matters is that they're coming, and we'll be ready for them." He spent the next hour organizing the ranch's defenses. The hands were positioned strategically around the property, the horses moved to the barn for safety, and ammunition distributed. Gabriella helped where she could, filling canteens and preparing food that could be eaten quickly during what might be a long standoff. As night fell, the ranch became eerily quiet. Beau insisted Gabriella sleep in his room at the center of the house where she would be better protected. He would take the first watch with Garrett. "Try to rest," he told her, checking once more that the revolver he'd given her was loaded. "I'll wake you if there's any trouble." Sleep seemed impossible under the circumstances, but exhaustion eventually claimed her. Gabriella dreamed of gunfire and galloping horses, of falling from great heights into strong arms that always caught her. She woke suddenly in the pre-dawn darkness to the sound of Beau entering the room. "They're here," he said quietly. "At least 6 riders watching the ranch from the ridge." Gabriella sat up, instantly alert. 6? I thought there were only 4 left. "They've recruited more men." Beau handed her a cup of coffee. "Drink this. Then I want you to stay in this room, away from the windows. The walls are thick here." "What are you going to do?" His expression was grim. "Whatever I have to." As he turned to leave, Gabriella caught his hand. "Beau, wait." She rose from the bed, still fully dressed from the night before. "I can't hide while you and your men risk your lives for me." "This isn't just about you anymore," he said. "Clayton's kind can't be allowed to terrorize decent folk. Someone needs to take a stand." "Then let me stand with you," she insisted. "I'm not helpless." Beau studied her face for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Stay with Garrett in the main room. He'll keep you safe." The hours that followed were tense. Clayton's men made no move as the sun rose, simply watching from the ridge. Noon approached, the deadline in the note drawing near. "What are they waiting for?" Gabriella asked as she and Garrett peered cautiously through a window. "They're hoping we'll get nervous and give in," the foreman replied, "or make a mistake." At precisely noon, a single rider separated from the group and rode partway down the hill, stopping in clear view of the ranch house. He raised a white flag. "They want a parley," Beau said, watching through field glasses. "That's Clayton himself. I recognize him from the wanted posters." "It could be a trap," Garrett warned. "Could be, but I'm going to hear what he has to say." Beau checked his pistol. "Keep me covered." Before Gabriella could protest, he was out the door and mounting dash. She watched anxiously as he rode to meet Clayton halfway between the house and the ridge. The 2 men spoke for several minutes, their gestures occasionally animated, but not threatening. Finally, Beau turned his horse and rode back to the house. "What did he want?" Gabriella asked as soon as he entered. "What he said in the note. You." Beau's expression was hard. "He thinks you're the bank clerk's wife and that you can identify him. I told him he was mistaken, that you're a schoolteacher who was simply on the wrong stagecoach. He didn't believe me." "What happens now?" "He's given us until sundown to reconsider. After that, he says his men will come in shooting." Beau ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I've sent Riley to River's Bend to fetch the marshal, but he won't get there and back in time." "Maybe I should just go with them," Gabriella suggested desperately. Explain that I didn't see anything clearly, that I can't identify anyone. No. Beau's tone left no room for argument. Men like Clayton don't leave witnesses, no matter what they promise. The moment they had you away from here, you'd be dead. The hours until sundown passed with excruciating slowness. Beau and his men made final preparations, moving furniture to create barricades and positioning themselves at every possible entry point. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, Beau found Gabriella in the kitchen, writing something at the table. "What's that?" he asked. "Letters," she replied without looking up. "To my aunt in St. Louis and to you." She finally raised her eyes to his. "In case something happens to me." Beau took the papers from her hands and set them aside. "Nothing's going to happen to you. I won't let it." "You can't promise that." Her voice trembled slightly. "There are 6 of them and only 5 of you. And they're killers. So was the mountain lion that attacked our cattle," Beau said with grim humor. "Didn't end well for the cat." Despite the tension, Gabriella smiled. Then, impulsively, she rose and kissed him, pouring all her unspoken feelings into the gesture. Beau responded with equal fervor, his arms pulling her close as if he could shield her from the coming danger through sheer will. When they parted, he pressed his forehead to hers. "When this is over," he promised, "we'll have that conversation we keep getting interrupted from, properly this time." "I'll hold you to that," she whispered. The last rays of sunlight were fading when the attack began. Unlike the Stagecoach ambush, there was no preliminary gunfire, no warning. Clayton's men simply charged down the hill toward the ranch, rifles blazing. Beau and his men were ready. Their return fire was disciplined and accurate, dropping 2 of the attackers before they reached the yard. The remaining 4 scattered, taking cover behind the water trough, the woodpile, and a wagon. Gabriella crouched behind an overturned table beside Garrett, her revolver clutched in trembling hands. The old foreman fired steadily through a window, his expression focused. "Stay down," he instructed her. "Only shoot if one of them gets inside." The gunfire was deafening, punctuated by shouts and the occasional crash as bullets found their mark in the house's wooden walls. Through a gap in the barricade, Gabriella could see Beau firing from the doorway, ducking back as bullets splintered the frame around him. Time seemed to stretch and compress strangely. What might have been minutes felt like hours as the battle raged. One of Beau's men cried out, "Hit in the shoulder by a stray shot." Gabriella crawled to him, using her petticoat to bind the wound while Garrett covered them. "They're trying to circle around to the back," Beau called from his position. "Riley, cut them off!" The youngest hand disappeared toward the rear of the house. Moments later, more gunfire erupted from that direction. Through the chaos, Gabriella heard a heavy thud against the front door, followed by splintering wood. One of Clayton's men had reached the porch and was trying to break in. Beau fired through the door, and a scream told them his aim had been true. "2 down, 4 to go," Garrett muttered, but their advantage was short-lived. A shout from outside turned everyone's attention to the yard, where Thomas Clayton himself stood in plain view, holding something in his hand. "Foster!" he yelled. "I've got a little present for you and your men." The object in his hand was smoking a dynamite stick with a lit fuse. With a powerful throw, Clayton sent it arcing toward the house. "Get down!" Beau shouted. The explosion rocked the building, shattering windows and sending debris flying in all directions. Gabriella felt Garrett throw himself protectively over her as dust and splinters rained down. When she could see again, there was a gaping hole in the wall near the front door. Clayton and his remaining men used the confusion to charge the house, firing as they came. One of them made it through the hole before Beau could stop him. The outlaw swung his rifle like a club, catching Beau across the temple and sending him staggering back. Garrett fired, hitting the man in the leg, but not before he'd managed to cross to where Gabriella was sheltering. With a snarl, the wounded outlaw grabbed her arm, yanking her up to use as a shield. "Clayton!" he shouted. "I got her!" Gabriella's heart pounded as the cold barrel of a pistol pressed against her temple. The outlaw dragged her toward the hole in the wall, his grip painful on her arm. "Nobody move or she dies," he threatened, backing away with Gabriella in front of him. Beau had regained his feet, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. His eyes met Gabriella's, a silent communication passing between them. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. In one fluid motion, she went limp in her captor's grasp, dropping her weight suddenly. The surprise made him loosen his grip just enough. Gabriella twisted away as Beau fired, the bullet striking the outlaw in the chest. Clayton, seeing his plan failing, bellowed with rage and charged through the hole himself, guns blazing. Beau dove for cover, pulling Gabriella with him behind an overturned sideboard as bullets splintered the wood around them. "Give it up, Clayton," Beau shouted. "Your men are down. The marshal's on his way." "Then I've got nothing to lose," Clayton responded, his voice unnervingly calm now. "But I'll take you and the woman with me." The exchange of gunfire resumed, more intense than before. Clayton was pinned in the corner of the room, but his position gave him good cover and a clear line of sight to where Beau and Gabriella were sheltering. "I'm almost out of ammunition," Beau whispered to her. "When I move, stay here." "What are you going to do?" she asked, fear gripping her. "End this." Before she could stop him, Beau rolled away from their cover and fired his remaining shots at Clayton, forcing the outlaw to duck. Then, with his gun empty, Beau charged across the room. Clayton raised his pistol with a triumphant smile, but as he pulled the trigger, Garrett fired from the side, throwing off his aim. The bullet meant for Beau's heart grazed his arm instead. Momentum carried Beau forward, crashing into Clayton and sending them both to the floor. The two men grappled fiercely, Clayton's gun skittering away in the struggle. Beau landed a solid punch that rocked the outlaw's head back, but Clayton responded with a knee to Beau's wounded arm that made him gasp in pain. Gabriella watched in horror as Clayton reached for a knife at his belt. Without thinking, she raised the revolver Beau had given her, aimed at Clayton's shoulder, and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed in the suddenly quiet room. Clayton jerked, the knife falling from his hand, his eyes wide with shock. Beau seized the moment to deliver a knockout blow that left the outlaw unconscious on the floor. The silence that followed seemed deafening after the chaos of the gunfight. Gabriella's hands shook as she lowered the revolver. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Beau stood shakily, binding his bleeding arm with a strip torn from his shirt. "It's over," he confirmed. "They're either dead or unconscious. We've got them." Garrett had already moved to secure Clayton with rope. Outside, they could hear Riley checking on the fallen outlaws in the yard. Beau crossed to Gabriella and gently took the gun from her trembling hands. "You saved my life," he said softly. "I couldn't let him hurt you." Tears spilled down her cheeks as the reality of what had happened, what could have happened, hit her fully. Beau pulled her into his arms, mindful of his wound, and she clung to him, feeling the solid reassurance of his heartbeat against her cheek. "It's all right," he murmured into her hair. "It's over. You're safe now." The aftermath of the battle was chaotic but organized. Beau's injured hand was tended to, the surviving outlaws secured in the barn under guard, and the house's damage assessed. By the time Marshal Dawson arrived with a posse the following morning, everything was under control. "You've done the territory a service," the marshal said as his men loaded Clayton and his 2 surviving gang members onto horses for transport to River's Bend. "These men have terrorized honest folk for too long." "Will there be a trial?" Gabriella asked. "There will, though with the evidence against them and multiple witnesses, it's likely to be short." The marshal looked at her thoughtfully. "Speaking of witnesses, I received a telegram from Denver yesterday. The real Mrs. Simmons arrived there safely with her husband. Seems they took a different route entirely, headed north to catch a train instead of taking the stagecoach." "So I was never in danger of identifying Clayton," Gabriella realized. "He attacked the wrong stagecoach." "Panic makes men do foolish things," the marshal said, and Clayton was definitely panicking about Simmons's testimony. After the marshal and his posse departed with the prisoners, an unusual quiet settled over Pine Creek. The hands set about repairing the damage to the house while Garrett organized a proper burial for the outlaws who hadn't survived the gunfight. Beau found Gabriella sitting on a boulder near the creek, watching the water flow past. The events of the past day of the past month seemed almost dreamlike now in the peaceful setting. "How's the arm?" she asked as he sat beside her. "Just a graze. It'll heal." He followed her gaze to the flowing water. "The marshal says it's safe for you to travel to Denver now. He's arranged for a stage next week if you still want to go." Gabriella was quiet for a long moment. "Do you want me to go?" she finally asked. Beau turned to look at her directly. "No, I want you to stay here with me." "As your housekeeper?" she asked, a small smile playing at her lips. "As my wife," he said simply. "If you'll have me." The directness of his proposal took her breath away. "Beau, we've known each other less than 2 months. And in that time, I've learned more about you than I have about people I've known my whole life." He took her hands in his blue eyes earnest. "I know your courage, your kindness, your determination. I know how you hum when you cook and bite your lip when you're concentrating. I know I love the sound of your laughter and the way you make this house feel like a home again." Tears welled in Gabriella's eyes. "What about my teaching?" "River's Bend is growing. They need a proper school and a teacher to run it. It would be a half-hour ride from here." He squeezed her hands gently. "You could build your school, teach your students, and still come home to Pine Creek." To me, the possibility unfurled before her like a map to a future she hadn't imagined but suddenly wanted with all her heart. "You've thought about this. Every day since I pulled you from that stagecoach." Beau reached up to brush a tear from her cheek. "I didn't believe in love at first sight before then, but when I saw you in that doorway, reaching for my hand despite your fear, something changed, something I can't explain but don't want to live without." Gabriella leaned into his touch, her heart full. "I felt it too. Not right away, perhaps, but during those long talks on the porch, those chess games by the fire, I found myself falling in love with you, Beau Foster." His smile was radiant. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes," she confirmed, laughing through her tears. "Though my aunt will think I've lost my mind. Agreeing to marry a man I've known such a short time. Then we'll just have to prove her wrong by being deliriously happy for the next 50 years or so." Beau leaned forward and kissed her, a kiss full of promise and future. They were married 2 weeks later in Rivers Bend, with Garrett standing as Beau's best man and Mrs. Polson from the trading post helping Gabriella prepare for the ceremony. The entire town turned out for the celebration, eager for good news after the dark shadow Clayton's gang had cast over the territory. As they rode back to Pine Creek that evening, husband and wife now, Gabriella marveled at how completely her life had changed in just 2 months. The teaching position in Denver was filled by another, with the school board's blessing and congratulations on her marriage. Meanwhile, the town council of Rivers Bend had enthusiastically approved her proposal for a proper schoolhouse to be completed by the following spring. "Happy?" Beau asked as they crested the hill that overlooked Pine Creek Ranch, the setting sun gilding the buildings and surrounding pastures. Gabriella looked at the man beside her, the man who had ridden alongside a runaway stagecoach and pulled her to safety, the man who had opened his home and heart to her, the man she now called husband. "Completely," she replied, knowing it was true. "This isn't the life I planned, but it's better than anything I could have imagined." Beau's smile was tender as he reached for her hand. "Welcome home, Mrs. Foster." And as they rode down toward the ranch together, Gabriella knew with absolute certainty that this unexpected journey, begun in terror, but transformed through courage and love, was exactly where she was meant to be. 5 years later, Pine Creek Ranch had flourished under their joint care. The modest house had been expanded to accommodate their growing family first, with the birth of their son James 2 years after their marriage, and then with their daughter Elizabeth, who had just celebrated her first birthday. The schoolhouse in Rivers Bend was a source of pride for the community, with Gabriella teaching 3 days a week while a young assistant handled the other 2. On teaching days, she would ride into town with James strapped securely in front of her, Elizabeth remaining at the ranch with either Beau or Mrs. Wilson, Garrett's wife, who had joined him at Pine Creek 2 years prior. The Clayton gang was now just a story they told occasionally, a dramatic tale of how they met, with details softened when young ears were present. Thomas Clayton and his surviving men had faced justice, sentenced to long terms in territorial prison, where they no longer threatened honest citizens. On the anniversary of the Stagecoach attack each year, Beau and Gabriella would ride to the small memorial that had been erected near the ravine, leaving flowers for those who had lost their lives. It was a reminder of how fragile life could be and how precious their own happiness was. As the sun set on another day at Pine Creek, Beau found Gabriella on their expanded porch, rocking Elizabeth to sleep while James played with wooden animals his father had carved for him. "I got a letter from the horse buyer in Denver today," Beau said, sitting beside her. "He wants 10 more of our trained stock, says they're the best he's seen." Gabriella smiled with pride. "Your breeding program is paying off." "Our breeding program," Beau corrected, as he always did. "Your suggestions for the record-keeping made all the difference." They sat in comfortable silence, watching James create an elaborate story with his toys. The boy had his father's blue eyes and his mother's thoughtful expression, a perfect blend of them both. "Do you ever regret it?" Beau asked suddenly. "Not going to Denver, taking a smaller school, marrying a rancher instead of some city gentleman?" Gabriella turned to him surprised. "Where is this coming from?" Beau shrugged, a little self-conscious. "Just thinking about how different your life might have been if that stagecoach hadn't been attacked. If you'd made it to Denver as planned." She reached for his hand, squeezing it firmly. "I believe we make our own fate, Beau Foster. Yes, circumstances brought us together in an unusual way. But everything after that, every choice, every decision that was ours, and I've never regretted a single one." Beau lifted her hand to his lips, kissing it softly. "Nor have I." As twilight deepened into night, they gathered their children and moved inside. James insisted on a bedtime story, and Beau obliged with a tale of brave cowboys and beautiful schoolteachers, of danger faced and love found. Gabriella listened, her heart full, as she settled Elizabeth in her cradle. Later, as they lay in their own bed, Beau pulled Gabriella close. "I thank God every day for you," he murmured against her hair. "Even when I reorganize your desk without permission," she teased, "especially then." He chuckled, "though I still can't find anything afterward." She turned in his arms to face him. "I love you, Beau Foster, disorganized desk and all." "And I love you, Gabriella Foster. More today than yesterday, but not as much as tomorrow." Their kiss was as sweet as their first, filled with the depth of feeling that had grown between them over the years. What had begun as a desperate rescue on a dangerous road had blossomed into a love that sustained them both, stronger than any challenge they might face. Outside, the stars shone over Pine Creek Ranch, watching over the home and family that had been forged in courage and preserved through love, a love as vast and enduring as the western sky itself.